out of control. Where every day is a duel. Every life is on the line. And every turn in the road brings you face to face with a new kind of terror. Mad Max. Pray that he's out there, somewhere.
And hello and welcome everyone to Malice Reviews. We're trying to do a new little setup. I hope it'll help streamline the reviews coming out, and we'll need it for the next couple of weeks. Also, I'm going to be trying to bring in guests. Today's guest, Aaron Burke, otherwise known as Romeomoon.
Hello.
Hello. So, today's topic is Mad Max, the first movie. How'd you like finally seeing it for the first time?
This isn't the first time I've seen it.
Well, all the way through.
It's the first time that I remember seeing the entire thing.
So, I guess, very brief plot synopsis. Mad Max focuses on Max Roccatelli, I think is how his name is pronounced.
I think so. That's close enough.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, he is a police officer that is helping a particular area deal with rowdy crazies and random savages, essentially, as it seems that the world itself has just kind of flopped over and is slowly falling apart. Still, there are central city or town-based groups that still seek to try and keep things the way they used to be, and they still hire up police, not unlike Max here, to try and help and keep the peace and take care of all the crazies that seem to just randomly happen to pass through and cause all kinds of damage. Max, at the very beginning of this movie, has to deal with one of these crazies known as the Night Rider. He is actually an officer killer. He has apparently slayed two previous police officers, stole their cruiser, grabbed a random floozy, and ran off. And we pick up with his pals at the same station, trying to keep up with this crazy. And in the end, he has to be called in, as he's apparently their ace in the hole whenever the other officers can't get trouble, at least in that particular area of town. So Max actually rides in head first, spooks the Night Rider, and after a bit more pressure causes him to crash with some very nice actual set pieces. This movie had no budget. There's no digital effects whatsoever, except for maybe a little bit of film speed up here and there. It's later found out as things continue to progress through Max's day in the life progression that apparently the other bikers that the Night Rider was a part of have found out about Max and have claimed him as their number one enemy and actually are seeking to end him. That being said, Max is just kind of treating it as a, well, that's not the first time kind of deal. And he is proceeding to do what he can. However, a couple of calls later, he ends up having to deal with a woman who's tied up to a guy's leg. The guy is whacked out of his mind, possibly on drugs. And he starts chanting about the Knight Rider. So apparently the gang has come into the local area, and they're obviously looking for Max and the other officers to try and deal with them. They do arrest the punk that they found there named John Boy, or Johnny, and they are forced to let him go because the girl that they found at the scene of the crime didn't come into the courts. The people at the village that they suddenly attacked and where this girl came from didn't show up. Nobody showed up to try and put Johnny away. So they are forced to let him go. But of course, if they ever meet in the streets, most likely it will turn into a bloody little fight there, and they'd finish their little fiefdom without the court's help. As apparently police brutality is allowed at a certain point in order to help protect the safety of others, of course. But as this progresses, the Goose in particular tried to keep Johnny there, and even started to beat him before he was able to escape. So they decided to pick on Goose as their next target, and so with that in mind, they rig his bike to crash, which it does. Goose then has to ask for help, managing to get a truck to help give him a lift back to the station. But on his way there, he is attacked yet again. This time John Boy tossing an item that crashes through his window and causes him to flip the truck. Gasoline pouring out everywhere. The leader, Toe Cutter, forces Johnny to light up a match and then set the gasoline ablaze. Max finds out, comes in to check on Goose, and claims that that thing that remained of Goose is not Goose, and continues to essentially not try to believe any of it. Also, partially fearing that he might lose it, that he might become like the crazy bikers themselves, but also worrying, of course, about the safety of his immediate family, his wife and his son. So when he tries to turn in papers to quit, his boss urges him instead to take a vacation for about a month and then come back and tell him what he really thinks. He takes the vacation. They head off for a little while. This seems nice and cozy again. Things calm out, but then all of a sudden, Max's wife runs into the Toe Cutter and others at I guess you call it a milk bar, and proceeds to make a hasty escape. But the gang continues to follow them to the point where they kidnap Max's son. They are forced to save the son again while Max is away trying to look for them, being dislocated into a different area because the bikers were apparently very quick to move out of the forest and move closer to the farm that they were staying at the time, and was too late to try and save his wife Jessica and their son when they tried using the van, breaking down on the highway and then getting run over by the bikers. Obviously, having not much left in his own mind to continue going on with, Max decides it's best to just feed into vengeance, proceeds to suit up, take the new super-powered V8 that the station just had recently put together, and goes off on a killing spree to take down all the bikers, and finally, in the end, cause Toe Cutter to crash into a truck, and then also set up Johnny for an explosive big finale at the very end of the film. And so that, in a sense, is majority of the plot. So, where to start then?
I'm just happy the future still has milk bars. I love ice cream.
A funny thing to note about that particular milk bar, I obviously over the years have been looking over special features and everything. Apparently, for the front of that milk bar, where all those signs and everything, the set producer actually had to literally go out to another milk bar, borrow their sides and even their front door, take it over to this particular on-location set it all up, film it, and then return it and have it all in place in time by the next day.
Jeez.
That's how shoestring budget this entire movie is.
The They couldn't even afford to make their own signs.
Nope. They literally had to beg, borrow, and maybe even sometimes steal everything they could get on screen.
Well, sometimes if it makes it work, you know.
And it probably helped to make the very empty feel of the movie to begin with.
Yeah.
Just you could only film out in isolated areas. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very desolate feeling film, of which it's going to be, you know. Not quite as much as the subsequent ones, but this film still has grass in it.
This film still has grass. It actually has a little bit of a forest at one point.
Yeah. The water is apparently clean enough to go swimming in, I would hope anyway.
Apparently, yeah, that one beachside area that they were at.
The beach and him swinging by the rope into that pond. It's actually a drainage pond for the local nuclear power plant.
Ooh. All of a sudden, Max notices next week that he's growing a third arm.
And a second head. That's a whole nother movie.
Sounds like something out of the quirky side of Fallout.
No, I was referring to the man with two heads, or the beast with two heads, or something like that. Isn't that one of the early toy? But it's had a bunch of American actors in it or so. It was one of those kind of mix mash type things. I'll find it for you online here.
I'm sure you will.
Yes.
So yeah, mentioning that, a lot of these vehicles are often mentioned quite a bit and quite heavily because there's a lot of really interesting cars in particular. The bikes themselves, all of the bikes in the movie were originally borrowed from, I think it was Kawasaki. And they willingly borrowed these things out, gave it to all the people who were going to be in the movie, in particular for the bandit biker group, and they were allowed to mess around with the bikes for about a month and come back ready for filming, and they just kind of suited the bikes up themselves a little bit and found their own leathers and everything. Apparently, a couple of people on the actual group were actually like Hell's Angels and one or two other gangs.
Oh wow, yeah.
And so in real life, they had a really interesting hodgepodge because you got at least two different biker groups, and then you got a group of guys who are actually there as stunt actors to actually get knocked around, beat about, and everything else for probably a better part of a month.
It kind of makes me wonder, did everybody get along with each other on the set? You keep saying that, these people come from different, well, obviously there's the stuntmen and the stars and everything, but then you've got a couple of different biker gangs, and biker gangs don't always get along with each other.
Notoriously, yes, but I think that even for a movie, there's probably enough money for them to just keep quiet and behave themselves.
Yeah, I
would argue that the on-screen chemistry of that particular gang is more enough to say that they apparently had no major qualms with one another.
Yeah. It's the film to me kind of feels, and I mentioned this while we were watching it. The film kind of has a 60s feeling to it. Some of the I wouldn't call them special effects, but some of the lighting effects. Well, I guess there's like visuals. A ripple effect in there. Yeah, when he first witnesses the goose's his horrible condition, there's a red light flashing and then this ripple effect and everything. It's something that I would expect to see on an episode of Star Trek. I've got Star Trek on the mind lately, and then also the topic of biker gangs, hunting down innocent bystanders and whatnot. That's really something that was found in exploitation films in the 60s and 70s too. So
and normally they'd have these swastikas on their shoulders or whatever. Yeah, crazy little things like that.
They were just missing the swastika. Actually, he was wearing a German helmet when he came out of the barn. It looked like a German helmet anyway.
It wasn't, but it was purposely styled to look slightly German, slightly Genghis Khan-esque as a whole for his outfit.
The barbarian hordes, huh?
Essentially.
Okay. Yeah,
A little
it's
mix of more modern bad taste and distant past bad taste, all rolled into a modern ball of evil and sinister.
yeah. There's definitely a sense of the exploitation film heritage in this movie. Some people
But
might even call it an exploitation film.
well, it's kind of apt because this was again a very low budget independent film made outside of the usual filmmaking crews, even in Australia. So
Yeah, and another thing I pointed out to you during the filming is that the reason, at least I've read on the wiki, on Wikipedia, that one of the reasons why they changed the title for the second film to the Road Warrior is that not necessarily everyone had seen the original Mad Max movie, and they didn't want people to be turned away by the idea that this was a sequel to a movie that they had never seen.
which is still kind of silly. It's more or less silly reasoning, like the reason why the second Godzilla movie was called Gigantus the Fire Monster, even though everyone who literally went to the movie went to the movie because it's another Godzilla movie.
Yeah, it's I don't know what else were we going to say about this. What did you think of the film?
Actually, I should probably talk a little bit about my past with this film.
Yeah.
I originally saw this when I was, and I will say, when I first saw it, I saw it all the way. I saw it when I was about, I want to say, 13 years old. My parents were always kind of sticklers for when it came to ratings in particular. However, my mother and father very obviously knew that there's a lot of older movies in particular that just come out unrated. So when you find an unrated movie, they can't really say no to you, even if the next sequel is rated R. So I got away with getting a VHS copy of Night of the Living Dead at a young age, and also got to rent Mad Max. You can imagine what a movie like this might do to a 13-year-old psyche when he can kind of sort of get what's going on here.
Mhm.
Just on that cusp of an age where that's the kind of stuff that might actually stick. That you wonder why this particular YouTube channel is called Mad Mad Inc. Because the madness is already around us.
Very
Um,
inspired, I guess.
I will also add that this particular VHS copy was from a local store. He's in the same town I'm still living in right now. And the tape was so old, it must have been like a first VHS release of it, that the footage was actually starting to go yellow.
Oh, wow.
That's how old that tape was getting.
Jeez.
That had to have been at least a early to mid 80s tape, and can you imagine how many times that thing's been rented by the time I got my hands on it in
Well,
like
yeah,
late 90s, early 2000?
because everybody sees the Road Warrior, and they're like, "Oh, I didn't
Well,
realize that this was a sequel. Let's rent the first
let's
movie.
watch the first one. The first
Let-
one's interesting, isn't it?
This newfangled technology called VHS."
So yeah, I have a history that's very odd with it. I saw it also because it was an American VHS. It was also with the English redubbing, the American redubbing of the film.
Hmm.
And I think there might have been a few little tidbits here and there that were actually cut out for the American film too. Even I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what they were, but I do remember seeing my DVD cut of it for the first time and going, "Whoa, that wasn't there originally. That wasn't there originally." Well, by the way, the colors are so much better, and they're all Aussies.
Yeah, I don't even remember the American English dub of it. I think most of it I've seen was on television.
Hmm.
It mostly hacked to pieces too, so
Yeah,
I could.
because they'll hack that for TV just to begin with, and then they'll find anything they don't want on the station and hack that out.
Hmm.
Then you got an extra commercial break.
Yeah. So you wanted to go over our favorite parts and our least favorite parts?
Yeah, I think we've talked long enough, haven't we?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, about 15 minutes about it in general.
Yeah.
So, yeah, let's start with good scenes. You first. What's one of your favorite scenes?
One of my favorite scenes is her running through the forest. Max's wife, Jessie,
Jessie.
running through the forest, trying to escape. It's very slasher movie feeling to it.
It does kind of verge on almost Texas Chainsaw, yes.
Yeah, it brings out more of the tone of desperation, of fight or flight, and this is definitely a time of flight, and that's almost the entirety of the movie. Is it's about trying to escape from some kind of predatory force.
Whether it be the world around you falling apart and either fighting it or running away from it as it collapses, or whether it be the crazies that are a result of it coming after you, quite literally.
That and her finally getting to the farm, and just the old woman. I never caught the name of her character. Mary, wasn't it Aunt Mary or something like that?
I'm not sure. I don't remember catching her name either.
The woman who can wield a shot. The old woman could
the
wield
old
a
woman
shotgun
with leg braces that wielded a shotgun like a motherfucker.
Yeah, like a walking stick. It's just like, yes. So it's
that
actually,
gun was practically as long as she was. She was by no means a tall woman.
Yeah, and strangely, you know, as frail as she is, even when she's firing the thing, she still comes off as a fairly strong. You know, she's a very strong character. And it's one of those false sense of security scenes where, oh well, it's not.
She managed to overpower them, and she's putting them all in the corner, and we can get out of here. And then they break free, and the car breaks down.
Yeah, Jessie's finally safe. The old woman with the shotgun's with her. What could go wrong? You know, and yeah, the car breaks down, of course, on the highway.
And then she tries to take one more pot shot at the bikers and wasn't able to hit a single one of them, at least not majorly.
Yeah, and it's just like, and we all, you know, when you've got psychopaths like that who aren't put off by gun blasts around them or anything like that, then there's very little a gun is going to be able to scare them, unless you'd have to be like a dead-eyed duck with that type of thing. So.
Which more or less Max was, but Max wasn't available at the time.
Yeah, he wasn't there, so yeah. It's just the whole scene is builds up to the idea where you think that you're safe. You're excited to try to get away from them. You think you're finally safe. Max is going to go off and take care of them, and
all of a sudden they're right there.
Yeah, all of a sudden they're right there. There is no safe place. So that's my favorite scene.
So one of my favorite scenes. I think that in general the montage of him going after the bikers is pretty good, but the particular scene in all that is when they take a quick break from the actual montaging and actually have a little scene where he sees one of the bikers crashed and then gets out of the car, that he gets attacked by them as they come out of the brush. They particularly shoot him in the leg and leave him there, and then as another guy suddenly comes out and runs over his other arm.
Yeah.
And even despite all of the pain and damage they just managed to do to him in just a couple of seconds, the biker is going to come back to finish him, and Max manages to use his other arm, gets up, and shoots the guy and blows him away. And even then, at that point, even the main boss, Toe Cutter, doesn't even want anything to do with him. He actually just hisses and he hops on his bike and runs off.
A freaking coward. Well, that's what they all are, is just cowards, you know?
Essentially, they will only attack when they think they have an advantage, and they, at that moment, had an advantage for a little bit. But Max turned it against them and got rid of another one of them.
I like how it kind of plays up Max's... was it fallibility, mortality, the fact that Max is only human. He can be injured. He can be taken down for at least a short time.
He's by no means immortal. He is just as possibly going to get murdered at the end of this movie as anybody else could have been.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, I don't know, I like that scene too, because, yeah, like I said, no one's perfect. No one's going to live forever, that's for sure.
And it just shows the kind of extent of Max's fight that's still in him, even though he's pretty much lost all of the people that he really knows. Bad moments then. Any particular bad moment that you can think of?
My mom had a problem with this scene, and looking back at it now that I've just gotten done watching the movie, the bad scene that I don't really like, that really doesn't add up for me, is the courtroom scene.
Oh, so the part where they're letting the Johnny Boy character out of their custody?
Yeah, where they're like, well, we have to let him go because we have nothing on him. It's just like, well, of course not. It's the freaking apocalypse. No one's going to have, like, videotape of him or pictures of them running around doing this. There's no forensic science to back this up anymore.
And if people aren't going to show up because they feel threatened by these people, of course they're not going to ever show up. They'll probably be running for the hills already as it is, if they aren't already being unofficially inducted into their group anyway.
Yeah,
kind of like even the repair guy that we see later.
Exactly. And it's just, well, and it's very frustrating. I feel Goose's pain, because I do feel that it's all bullshit. The idea that, well,
it's just another further sign of everything falling apart.
We are greeted with the satire that both lawyers and earlier on we see a political figure who's complaining about Fifi stealing, taking money to use to keep Max on the force by tempting him with an interceptor.
Yeah, with a super souped up interceptor, which they technically borrowed parts from, but they apparently also, Fifi, their head officer, probably asked a guy to give some money to help get the last parts they needed to keep it up and running.
Yeah. And it's just like, well, as much as I, can appreciate the satire of this, I can also appreciate how aggravating it feels for everyone involved too. It's just like, well, maybe this is the reason why society kind of fell apart, is because of all this little nitpicking and stuff like that. But then, if that's the case, then what separates us from the bad guys if we do get rid of all of our little laws and all of our justice systems? I think it's to point out that the justice system is in fact broken.
Yeah, pretty much everything is broken, even though people are still scrambling to keep things working. And that's the thing about Max too, is by the end of this movie, he does become one of the bikers. At least, if nothing else, for at least a little while, he becomes the crazy, and he takes out other crazies, thankfully. But
yeah,
he's already done damage to himself for having done that too.
Yeah, it should also be noted that his wife isn't really dead, so what happens to her after this? Does she
if she isn't dead, she's
away?
practically... if she's not dead, I would assume with all the amount of damage that they had to repair on her and the lackluster services they probably had for her health care, she's probably going to be hospital bound for the rest of her life, if that hospital even manages to stick around long enough to keep taking care of her.
I know, it's almost like the zombie apocalypse. I compared the movie to The Walking Dead, is that eventually everything falls apart. So that hospital, if she is hospital bound, she's kind of screwed, because there's nothing guaranteeing that building's even going to stay there.
There's nothing guaranteeing that thing's going to be running the next week, much less the next month.
And the subsequent movies, we don't see too much left of, even the buildings that are standing, as he ventures into the wasteland.
Next movie, pretty much society as a whole is only the people that you can get together that aren't crazy enough to stab you in the back.
Yeah.
Whether it's
So what
because they're
was
trying to protect each other's back, or whether you just acknowledge that someone else is far superiorly strong to you.
so what was your least favorite scene?
My least favorite scene. Gotta mull this over because again, it's like finding a nitpick in an extremely well done movie that's been kind of a part of my life for a better part of over 10 years. Actually, almost coming up on 20 years now. Jeez. If I was to nitpick, I would say the one thing that doesn't quite connect, although I kind of understand the logic behind it, but the whole scene with shooting the mannequin. Essentially, it's leading up to them trying to teach Johnny that he needs to shape up or ship out, and by shipping out we mean a shotgun to the mouth. Um, and then forcing him to take action against Goose and then Max. But a lot of the setup just doesn't really make any kind of sense, and it's a bunch of people doing the hell ever they're doing on a beach. They got mannequins, they got weird outfits and props all over the place. It's just kind of odd. It just kind of comes out of nowhere.
I guess they're supposed to be kind of emphasizing the fact that they're insane, but
Or slightly mad.
That's another thing that kind of makes this whole movie also give it kind of a 60s, 70s type flair. It's kind of an evil or ass backwards version of the Annette. Was it Johnny and Annette or whatever? The beach movies, the beach bum movies, where the people are surfing and everything like that. So, and everyone's having beach blanket bingo, for example. It's like an evil, horrible version of that turned on its head, where everyone is having a good time and they're dancing and they're like, oh hey, let's everyone play some volleyball. Let's watch the surfing contest.
Let's shoot the loser. What?
Yeah, it's like, wait. Bird is a word? What?
Bird is the word, and remember the bird because it flies in the night sky. Throw up your hands and walk away.
Yeah, it's kind of a horrible dystopian feel. Well, dystopian, but like a horrible apocalyptic feel to that, type of movie. So. I don't know. Yeah, but I understand why it would feel kind of.
It still just doesn't quite mesh. At least for the beginning half of it. It starts to make its point clear a little bit later into it, but yeah, the first half of it just like, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah, it's also
Did I drop some acid? What's going on?
Yeah, it's also obviously foreshadowing them hunting down Jessie and attempting to kill her. So.
And also their decision to also attack Goose first. Since Johnny had a very rough run-in with Goose and his fist.
And I guess it also serves to emphasize that nothing is really sacred to these people. Not even fake women or fake men or whatever.
Not even the props around them, not even their objects that they hold dearest. Nothing is sacred. We will randomly just blast everything to Kingdom Come and rip things to shreds and use it and abuse it and leave it.
I guess you could say that the mannequin is almost a symbol of civilization. We have plastic people that wear our clothes for us to show us what the next big fashion trend is, and these
Instead
guys
of being fashionable and looking towards the future, we just shoot it in the face.
Yep. Kill it now.
So
because we have no use for it.
I guess we are at the point then we will talk about ratings then. So again, after you are the guest.
What is our range for these ratings? What's the lowest and what is the highest that we can go? And maybe what are some of the intermediary?
I try to run. I like to say I run almost a 1 to 5, but instead of again using numbers and my eyes, but but instead of using numbers, I would use words and then express what I mean by that word. Like a 3 would be an average.
Yeah. Okay.
Two would be a poor, and then we have just plain simple bad at the bottom.
All
And
right.
then we have average, good, excellent, and dare I say
Superb,
near perfect.
sublime. Yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines. Yes.
All right. I guess I would give this the original Mad Max movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would actually give this a very good, I would say.
Okay, so
It's
just a
not
little bit above a
perfect.
good.
It's not perfect and it's not excellent, but it's a good introduction to everything. So to the world of Max, I should say.
Okay, so I would have to probably agree with you there. As much as huge as a fan as I am of the franchise, I will say that the original Mad Max has aged a bit, if that's the right word for it. It's definitely very much a thing of its time, which was the slowly winding out of the last bit of nostalgia for 60s and with
Mm-hmm.
the eventually oncoming storm that would be the 1980s and what that would bring to the franchise in particular. Um, I also would say that the budget was as much a limitation as it was a artistic help to the particular movie as well. So that's kind of a mixed bag. It could have been so much more, but at the same time, if you had so much more, what would you actually do with it that they weren't already doing in the first place, you know?
Yeah.
So, it's definitely above good, but it's not exactly excellent. It's an interesting little showcase showing where things would start, but then we get into the real post-apocalypse after this particular movie, and that's what we would pretty much be surfing on for the next two movies, and apparently from what I've seen of the fourth movie.
Yeah, I would definitely I don't know, like some people would say that it's a good point to start at the Road Warrior, but I like to see things kind of slide into a slow decay
Yeah,
type deal. And we
I
definitely get
also
that
would argue
feeling.
that when it comes to film and movies in particular, I am a must see everything kind of guy.
Mhm.
I can't just start in the middle and keep going. If I see something in the middle that I really like, I might watch a thing or two, but then I really need to rewind and go back to where it first started and see how we managed to get to this point.
Yeah,
See all the antics that came up in the meantime and how this all happened.
exactly.
So, so definitely not an average, and it's a little bit above a good. So, I assume both of us would say that it's definitely worthwhile for at least a first time watch.
Mhm. Definitely.
So, alrighty, so that will close our particular episode for today. That's our basic rating for Mad Max. It's worth at least a view. It's by far above good and way above average. So worth a shot. You can probably. I don't think you can find it on Netflix right now for some reason, but I would check around. I'm sure you can rent it from Amazon. If not, find some dirt cheap DVDs somewhere too. They're all over the place.
Possibly,
Trust me.
yeah, possibly on Hulu or Crackle or a lot of different streaming services you can find.
Maybe. Yeah, it
Yeah.
depends upon who actually has it, I guess.
Mhm.
But that'll be it for this episode. So thank you for coming on, Aaron.
Ah, you're welcome, Matt. Nice to be on again.
And we'll be seeing you all next time with our obvious next choice for our review, Road Warrior. See you all then.